All right, Tim Bouchang here is going to give a little testimonial as to how he came out of dispensational futurism and entered into high partial preterism slash postmillennialism. Now, my assertion is that people like Tim and these folks at Eschatology Matters have simply exchanged the errors, falsehoods, and lies of the dispensational futurist eschatological system with the equal but opposite errors, falsehoods, and lies of the preterist slash postmillennialist system.
Okay. Amen.
Group of guys were determined to so far distance themselves from any connotation that they were willing to throw their brothers under the bus, and that was disgusting.
Well, it's an election year, Tim, so buckle up. It's going to get dicey.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about a cheery, non-controversial topic. Let's talk about how you guys became convinced of postmillennialism and give a little personal testimony, but also a little theological reflection on what was it that led you individually into postmillennialism. What would you find most convincing or compelling? I'm curious.
Yeah. I'll go first. How about that? You know, growing up in the 60s and 70s in the middle American evangelical church, where your dispensationalism was a calling card for conservative Bible values, by the way. There are Bible colleges and seminaries that required you to take a strong stand, sign a statement that you believed in the fill in all the blanks, pre-wrath, rapture, pre-tribulation, return of Christ, set up as earthly king. Because if you didn't, then you were suspect. And they thought, well, you must not believe the Bible, because the Bible clearly teaches. And so that was my environment growing up. I even, believe it or not, I saw John R. Rice speak. Does anyone even know who that is? I'm really dating myself now.
I'm with you.
So fill in all the blanks. Let's fill in the blanks. The 5 main false teachings of the dispensational futurist eschatological system. 1, the belief in a pre-trib rapture. Now, he said pre-wrath, and there are pre-trib, mid-trib, pre-wrath, and post-trib people in the dispensational futurist eschatological system. Even post-trib would say, well, it happens after this mythical 7-year period of Great Tribulation, taken from a fallacious interpretation of Daniel 9:24 through 27 in the 70 weeks, which they believe the 70th week is still seeking future fulfillment. That's Futurism. Futurism really has to do with Antichrist, the identity of the Antichrist. Preterism says Antichrist was way in the distant past, don't need to worry about the Antichrist anymore, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. The dispensational futurists say Antichrist is still yet to arise. Still yet to arise. And both of them got 5 views of the millennium, Antichrist, Preterism, and Futurism. Okay, so that's the view that Tim has taken, the preterist view versus the futurist view. Almost like the religiously abused. And then this, I'm not sure what his name is here, but he's going to say he got fired from pastoral position in claiming that the rapture was nowhere to be found in the book of Revelation. Well, it is found in the book of Revelation, but it's not the rapture of the church. It's actually the rapture of Jesus himself. Let's see if we can do this. 1 Thessalonians 4, this is a rapture passage par excellence. 1 Thessalonians 4, 13 through 18. But notice what it's talking about. We who are alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord. This is the second advent. And then the dead in Christ will be resurrected at this time, at the coming of the Lord, at the second advent. And then we will be caught up, raptured up to heaven for 1,000-year heavenly reign. And that's why I had the Truth About the Millennium paper up here as well. Truth About the Millennium, 5 views, the heavenly premillennial view. That's the view that I hold. That is the view that the Bible teaches, the heavenly premillennial view. The amillennial and postmillennial view assert that the second advent of Christ takes place at the end of the millennium. All three premillennial views assert that the second advent precedes the millennium and kicks off the millennium. But there is a rapture in Revelation chapter 12, verse 5. Revelation chapter 12, verse 5. So just as the saints, the dead in Christ, resurrected saints, will be raptured up at the coming of the Lord, the parousia, harpazoed, caught up. So Jesus was caught up. Right? This woman, great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, moon under her feet. This is Israel, or also known as the church of the Old Testament. She brings forth the male child, the Messiah, who is to rule all nations with a rod of iron. But her child was raptured, harpazoed, caught up to God and to his throne. But the woman fled into the wilderness to be nourished for 1260 literal years. That is historicism. Historicism. Oh, let's see here. So historicism, the only proper way to understand Bible prophecy, utilizing the day equals year principle, is imperative. It's all about the identity of the Antichrist in Preterism and in Futurism and in historicism. So the Jesuit origins of Preterism, Louis de Alcazar. Futurism, Jesuit origins of Futurism, Francisco Ribera, later followed by Robert Bellarmine, who wrote a book on the Antichrist. They took away the 1260 years. They took away the day equals year principle and instead interpreted the 1260 days as literal, a literal 3.5 years. Most preterists will do that as well. And will claim, well, that was the years leading Nero, and then the years leading up, the few years, 3.5 years leading up to the temple destruction in 70 AD. Utter nonsense. The 1260 years did not begin until after the fall of the Roman Empire, as Jonathan Edwards would say. It is certain that the 1260 years, the time of the reign of Antichrist, did not commence before the year of Christ, 479. That's Jonathan Edwards. Here's another futurist chart here. Robert Breaker, teacher of the false dispensational futurist system of eschatology, sees 7 years and then Antichrist arises only after the mythical pre-trib rapture. All that kind of stuff. But that's Jonathan Edwards. Day equals year principle, right there. Chances are the preterists don't even know about it. And if they do, they don't care, which is the sad part. Little history of the Reformation and the Jesuit-led Counter-Reformation, with the Reformation gaining so much ground throughout Europe. Time-specific prophecy, 1260 days, 42 months, time times half a time. Daniel 7:25 and Daniel 12:7. Let's go to Daniel 7:25 because it's talking about the little horn. Then Revelation 11, verses 2 and 3. Revelation 12:6, we just saw that, and verse 14. And Revelation 13:5, talking about the Antichrist, the sea beast. Same entity as the little horn of Daniel chapter 7. So let's take a look at Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7. What rough beasts and the Antichrist? What rough beasts and the Antichrist? Because Daniel 7 is the first place we see the Antichrist. And we're given the very time of the little horn there. Futurism, Antichrist will be a single solitary individual. Preterism, Antichrist was a single solitary. Both of these views of Bible prophecy are false. Daniel 7, we'll see, has been unfolding consecutively without interruption since this prophecy was first given to Daniel in the 6th century BC, during the time of the Babylonian Empire, and then Daniel lived a few years into the Medo-Persian Empire as well. Prophecy of Daniel 7 gives us a repeat and expanded version of Daniel chapter 2. 4 great beasts came up out of the sea. Let's just go through these. The fourth beast, it's going to have 10 horns will spring up out of the fourth beast. 3 of them will be plucked up by the roots before this little horn could arise. And this little horn would have a mouth speaking great things, great propositions, great false doctrines and dogmas. Daniel 7, the 4 beasts that rise up out of the sea, parallel with Daniel chapter 2 again. The Babylonian Empire, followed by the Medo-Persian Empire, followed by the Grecian Empire, followed by the Roman Empire. Now look at the Roman Empire goes on until the 5th century AD. That's why Jonathan Edwards said the 1260 years did not commence before the year of Christ 479 AD. He meant the fall of the Roman Empire. They commenced after the fall. 10 horns symbolize the 10 tribal kingdoms that made up the Roman Empire after its fall in 476 AD. Here's my list right here. Here's Dr. John Gill's list, who was contemporaneous with Jonathan Edwards. The 10 kingdoms which sprung out of the Roman Empire upon the dissolution of it about AD 476. He gives Mede's list. He gives Sir Isaac Newton's list. Back to the prophecy. I desired to know the truth about the fourth beast and about the 10 horns that were on its head and the other horn that came up, before which 3 of them fell, because this horn had eyes and a mouth that spoke great things. Once again, that's twice. Has a mouth that spoke great things. And this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them until the Ancient of Days came and judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. So this little horn is the Antichrist. 3 of the 10 would have to be plucked up by the roots before the little horn could arise, and that would have to be after the fall of the Roman Empire. Those 3 kingdoms were the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. Give a basic outline of these 3 horns being plucked up by the roots. The Heruli were the first of the barbarian invaders and tribes to invade and subsequently rule over Rome in 476 AD. That's the fall, the official fall of the Roman Empire. The Heruli king Odoacer with his army rode into Rome and usurped the last of the Roman emperors there, Romulus Augustulus, who was either 16 or some say 11, some say 13. While Odoacer did not execute him, he did proclaim himself king in Rome. Odoacer was an Arian, so he held to the Arian heresy that the Son, Jesus, was not eternal. But he was tolerant toward the Catholics, and of course Catholic literally meaning universal, but in this context we're talking about the fact that they are Trinitarians as opposed to Arians. That's why I always say the Antichrist had to be Trinitarian. It couldn't be Arian, it couldn't be Sabellian. It had to be Trinitarian. Otherwise it could not sit in the temple of God, in the church of God. Odoacer, however, hated by the Italians, and at the suggestion of the Eastern Emperor Zeno, the ruler of the Ostrogoths, Theodoric, invaded Italy in 489 and eventually secured the surrender of Odoacer in 493, and thus the first of the 3 horns was uprooted, the Heruli. So the very ones who caused the ultimate end of the Roman Empire were the first ones uprooted. As far as the Church and Bishop of Rome was concerned, the change from the ruler of Heruli to Ostrogothic made no real significant change. Theodoric was also an Arian, but was also very tolerant toward the Catholic Trinitarians. The Vandals, however, who had settled in northern Africa and since their sacking of the city of Carthage in 439 AD, were violently opposed to the Trinitarian Catholics. The Vandals were also Arian. In order to assist the West, the Eastern Emperor Justinian sent his ablest general Belisarius to go up against the Vandals in North Africa, and he vanquished them completely in 534 AD. Thus, the second of the 3 horns came to its end at this time. This victory left the Ostrogoths in Rome. Remember, they had overthrown the Heruli, so they're still in Rome, as the sole surviving Arian power in the West. Belisarius then, from northern Africa, after having vanquished the Vandals, so he's in northern Africa on the Mediterranean, he just sails north to Rome, turned his attention toward the Ostrogoths in Italy in 538. Justinian also landed an eastern army to assist Belisarius in his overthrow of the Ostrogoths in Italy. and the Ostrogoths abandoned Rome at this time, and this was the real end of Ostrogothic power in the West. Thus, the third of the three horns was uprooted in 538 AD. Now, here's what happened as a result of this. Only after these three horns were plucked up by the roots could the little horn rise to power. The Code of Justinian was a means for the Eastern Emperor to try and maintain a strong connection between Eastern and Western parts of the former Roman Empire. The gathering and organizing of the existing laws of the empire were important here. There were two official letters from Justinian that were incorporated into the code. Thus, these carried with them all the force of a royal edict. In one of them, Justinian, legally and by royal decree, declared the Bishop of Rome as the, quote, head of all the holy churches. Right? This is why the Westminster and the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith, both those confessions in their chapters on the church, both say Jesus Christ is the only head of the church. I insert the word only there, solus Christus. He's the only head of the church. Neither can the Pope of Rome be the head thereof, but is that Antichrist, that man of sin, son of perdition, who exalts himself in the church against Christ, whom the Lord shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 8. But the Justinian decree made the Bishop of Rome the head of all the holy churches and also the head of all the holy priests of God. Though this legal recognition of the Bishop of Rome's ecclesiastical supremacy is dated to 533 AD, the imperial edict carried no force while the Arian Ostrogothic kingdom was still in power in Rome. Thus, it was only after 538 AD, with the defeat of the Ostrogoths in Rome, that the royal edict could take effect. This little horn had come to his seat in great authority. After this, the Bishop of Rome's power would only continue to grow. The papal Antichrist. 1260 years from about 538 AD. About 538 AD. So, that goes against Preterism. That also goes against Futurism, doesn't it? So, again, these fellas are exchanging the lies of dispensational futurism with the lies of preterism coupled with postmillennialism. That's the shame. That's the shame of this. That's what I lament personally. So I'll keep doing the best of my ability to try to bring light to these issues, but they're ignoring the Reformation. They're ignoring the Reformation and the historicism of the Reformation with their preterism. People like Jonathan Edwards. The rise of the Antichrist was gradual. The Christian church corrupted itself. Apostasy, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Apostate. Especially the Bishop of Rome assumed more and more authority to himself. After that, he claimed power of a temporal prince and was wont to carry two swords to signify that both the temporal and spiritual sword were his. Emperors received their crowns at his hands. If the Pope was pleased to excommunicate a king or a prince or a whole nation, then that whole nation were at once freed from their allegiance to their king, their prince, or their own government and obliged not to own him anymore. The Pope was believed to have the power to damn men at pleasure. Whoever died under his excommunication were looked upon. This is how he made war against the saints and prevailed over them by getting them to believe false doctrines. If you put that state or kingdom under an interdict, which was a sentence pronounced by the Pope against that state or kingdom, whereby all sacred administrations among them could have no validity till that interdict was taken off, so that in their apprehension they looked at themselves in a miserable and damnable state. See how well this agrees with the prophecies of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the man of sin, son of perdition. That's the papal Antichrist. The little horn of Daniel chapter 7, that is the papacy, that is the Antichrist. Revelation 13, verses 1 through 10, the sea beast, that is the Antichrist, that is the papacy. And of course, the scarlet harlot, Revelation 17, is the Antichrist, the papacy. Okay? All right, well, that's all I have to say on that particular issue today. I mean, there's a lot more to say, obviously, but Nobody can accuse me of abandoning the Reformation. I can definitely accuse you all of abandoning the Reformation. Jonathan Edwards also believed in a rapture, too, by the way, just so you know. He just misplaced it, that's all, with regard to the millennium. That's all he did. We stand on the shoulders of giants that we may see further than they did. You guys aren't standing on their shoulders. You're kicking them in the shins and slapping them in the face. All the reformers who wrote on these subjects. That's what Preterism does. That's what Futurism does. Both Jesuit concoctions. We'll talk to you soon. Soli Deo Gloria.